What's up, Commanders? Dimebot here. Welcome back to Elite Dangerous, and today I'm gonna rant a little bit. So I apologize ahead of time. And what am I gonna rant about? I'm gonna rant about exactly what I'm doing right now, which is colony stuff, particularly hauling resources for colonies. Now, we've been going for I think it's about a month now, actually. And some of the flaws in the beta are starting to become even more readily apparent than we thought they might be. The biggest one being the sheer amount of resources needed to build some of these stations. Let's have a quick look at that with this particular station that I'm working on. So, and this is just a asteroid base, but I've already cleared a lot of it. 13,000 steel, 9,000 aluminum, 8,000 cement composite. This is nothing compared to some of the larger stations. This is a lot of stuff. This is why you see fleet carriers being used for this so much. Now, the problem is, and I have done a fair amount of perusing the forums and looking at Reddit, for the largest part, it's single commanders that are just grinding out this hauling. I see it in my stream chats all the time. Just grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding, endless trips, and that is objectively no fun. And I want to address a couple things that I've seen said in response to this. So, I am no stranger to grinding over the years in Elite. I just want to get that out of the way right up front. But some of the responses I've seen to this are comedic, bordering on the asinine, and one argument in particular that really just made me want to, if I had hair, I would rip it out because it is one of the ones that I hate the most that I see pop up in the Elite player base, and I cannot stand the commanders that make it. So, let's go ahead and take them one by one. So, getting help from other commanders. Here's the big problem with that. Unless you have a group of friends that are willing to help, or you are really well known, like I'm sure Commander Obsidian Ant wouldn't have a problem getting a bunch of people to help him colonize the system. Sorry, Ant, I love you, but your name was just the first one that came to mind. Most commanders don't have that. So you're reliant on some way to incentivize the players to do that, and there's no way to do that. This particular commander that I'm using, I started out working on these colonization projects with 2 million credits. I have completed 3 facilities, and I'm up to 33 million credits just running things back and forth. Dedicated haulers can make that in a couple trips somewhere. There is no real incentive for them to do this monetarily. And we do not have a way to set up a structure for that. As the system architect could change prices, could set up missions, could set incentives. And maybe that's what the Vanguard system is going to help us do when it comes later in the summer. But right now, you have no way to up the incentive other than saying nicely, hey, could you please help me out? And that's really not going to work a lot of the time. The other thing that I see is that people are saying, well, if you don't like the gameplay loop, don't engage with it. Nah, you can get the hell out of here with that. Because, one, it is the most asinine, stuck-up, bullshit response to something. And I'll tell you why. Because the gameplay loops all affect the entire game. If you have people that are coming back to the game to check out Colonization, and they are like, well, this is neat for the first week, and then there's like, oh my god, this is a horrible grind, they're likely to walk away from the game. Now, what does that do? Well, that's a player that we don't have actively engaging with the game, actively engaging with the community, telling their friends about it. That's a player that's not buying pre-built ships or paint jobs or ship kits, so that's money that FDev is losing out on. That's also a player that when somebody mentions Elite to them, they're going to be like, yeah, I tried it, and it was horribly grindy, and there's a player that's not going to potentially check out the game because their friend recommended it. So there are a lot of negatives to the gameplay loop disincentivizing players to take part in it. And if you're one of those people that say that if you don't like it, don't engage with it, I don't even want you to comment on this video. Click away right now because you are full of shit. Moving on. That was the really ranty portion. I'm sorry, guys. That manner of thinking has always enraged me. Moving on, it doesn't really affect anybody but the people that are doing colonization. It actually does, because if you remember when colonization first launched The BGS was teetering on the verge of collapse. Think about all the stations across the entire bubble that did not have CMM composites or insulating membranes or polymers or liquid oxygen, things like that. What they have put in as requirements for these materials are things that are generally, even with the colony ships, not always the easiest things to find. Thankfully, Trailblazer Song is here and I can get basically whatever I want at this point. But this does affect the BGS, and the BGS affects every single player, and you guys all know that. That's why there are so many posts about the problems with the BGS right now. So, you can't exactly safely say, just ignore it, it doesn't affect me, unless you're out in the middle of nowhere doing some exploration. So, that is kind of a false argument. The bottom line is that colonization has some issues that need to be fixed. They need to streamline some things, be that lowering some of the materials costs to build certain things, letting us incentivize players to actually help us out with this stuff. Something needs to be done. Maybe move it on to a beta 2.0 phase with some revamp stuff. And we're not even getting into the whole idea of all of the things that aren't quite clear that people are having to experiment with to figure out colonization, like building a system, a colony in orbit. What planet's economy does that affect? What station's economy does that affect? How do I make my Coriolis station flip from a giant bio-waste producing toilet in space to something that's actually useful for my system's economy? There's a lot of learning by experimentation, which when you have this high of a entry cost is really not a good time in a lot of ways. So that's some more clarity that needs to be had. And that's, again, far and away outside of the issues that I have been talking about so far with just getting materials hauled to our colonies. I think that they are still off to a good start. Don't get me wrong. I think it is a neat system. I think it has a ton of potential. But I think that it's a little undercooked. And after a month, we're really starting to see that it's undercooked. Some of the seams are starting to show, and I think FDev needs to address that quickly before it becomes Power Play 1.0 all over again. Alright guys, that's it. Rant over. Thank you for hearing me out if you are still here at the end. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'm Dimebot, 07 Commanders. I'll see you next time.